You think God has turned his back when everything starts falling apart? No, that's when he quietly starts rebuilding your life with a mighty, unseen hand. Think back to that moment when every door slammed shut. You lost your job. You lost someone you loved. You lost your way. And as you stared at the ceiling in the silence of your darkest night, you asked, "Why me? Why now?" But what you didn't know is that this was step one in a plan far greater than you ever imagined. When God is about to bless you with something big, he doesn't announce it with fireworks. He doesn't knock on your door with flashing lights. He starts by pruning. He removes the relationships you thought would last forever. He removes the job that fed your ego but starved your soul. He removes even the old version of you, the one that's not strong enough to carry what's coming next. Not because you're not enough, but because what's coming is too big, too heavy, and too sacred, and you must evolve to receive it. Can't you see it now? Every great life, every hero, every leader, every legend was forged in the fire of loss, doubt, and isolation. But it was that fire that made them unstoppable. So if you're in your darkest hour, listen closely. Don't quit, because you just might be one step away from everything you've been praying for. It never begins with clarity. It begins with confusion, with loss, with things breaking down before you ever see anything being built. Most people think that when life starts falling apart, it's a sign to retreat, to pull back, to protect what little is left. But the truth is, that's the first signal that something greater is being prepared. When God is about to give you something big, he doesn't decorate your current comfort, he dismantles it. You begin to feel disconnected from things that once made you feel alive. The job you once loved feels draining. The relationships you clung to no longer bring peace. Your routines start to feel like cages. At first, you resist. You fight to keep things as they were. But slowly, piece by piece, life begins to strip away what no longer fits. And it hurts. Let's be honest. Losing something, especially when you didn't expect it, can shake your foundation. But what if you're not losing? What if you're being repositioned? You see, before God delivers new blessings, he often performs surgical removals. He takes away not to punish, but to prepare, because the weight of greatness is heavy. And if you're still carrying old habits, toxic attachments, or small thinking, you won't be able to hold what he's about to place in your hands. Think of pruning a tree. The cutting looks violent to the untrained eye, but to the gardener, it's necessary. Because if you don't prune, the tree won't bear fruit. The same principle applies to you. Your loss is not random. It's a divine refinement. Let me share a story that proves this. There was a woman named Tara. For years, she worked at a corporate job that gave her stability but stole her spirit. She never had time to write something she once loved. When layoffs came, she was devastated. No backup plan, no savings. For weeks, she sat in silence, ashamed, afraid. But in that silence, something stirred. She picked up her pen again. That was 3 years ago. Today, Tara is a published author, keynote speaker, and has built a global community around her message. She never would have walked that path without the loss that forced her to stand still. Loss cracks the surface so the truth can rise. And maybe your life is cracking right now. Maybe your certainty is gone. Maybe what once held you steady now feels like it's slipping through your fingers. Don't panic. Pause. Listen. Because this is not the end. This is where transformation begins. It is in the soil of discomfort that seeds of destiny are planted. So if your world feels like it's collapsing, if people are walking away, opportunities are closing, and the path ahead is hidden in fog, take heart. You're not being abandoned. You're being aligned. The shedding is sacred. The loss is sacred. The discomfort is sacred. You are being emptied, so you can be entrusted, because what's coming isn't ordinary, and the person you were cannot carry the blessing that's about to arrive. You're not falling apart. You're falling into place. And one day, you'll look back at this chapter, the one that felt like everything was being taken from you, and you'll see it clearly. That was the day God began to give you more than you ever asked for. Have you ever wondered why, just before everything in your life changes, you suddenly feel alone? It's almost like the people you used to lean on aren't there anymore. The conversations grow cold. The invitations stop coming. Even the dreams that once gave you fire start to feel far away. And then it hits you, you've been left alone. But let me tell you something, most people never realize. When God is about to transform your life, He doesn't always send a crowd, He sends silence. Why? Because transformation doesn't begin in the spotlight. It begins in isolation. Think of it like this. Every seed must go underground alone in the dark before it can break open and grow. Before it ever touches the sunlight, it must be buried. That burial looks like the end. It feels like death, but it's not death. It's germination. That's how God works with you too. He places a dream, a purpose, a calling deep within you. But before He brings it to life, He buries you in a season where nothing makes sense. And it's in that darkness, in the silence of isolation, that something powerful begins to happen. Your roots start to grow. You begin to discover who you are, apart from the noise. You start to learn the sound of your own thoughts. You hear God's whisper where you used to chase validation. It's not easy. You'll have nights when you sit alone on the edge of your bed, staring at the wall, asking, why does it feel like I'm disappearing? But maybe you're not disappearing. Maybe you're being redefined. You see, in the eyes of the world, loneliness is weakness. But in the eyes of heaven, loneliness is classroom. It's where Moses met God in the wilderness. It's where Joseph learned integrity in a prison. It's where David was trained to be king while tending sheep in the fields, unseen, uncelebrated, underestimated. And it's where you are learning to hear your name not from a crowd, but from your Creator. So if you feel isolated right now, if it seems like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck in stillness, don't mistake that stillness for punishment. It's preparation. God is pulling you back like an arrow, only so He can launch you farther than you ever thought possible. He's removing the people who can't go where you're going. He's cutting off the conversations that would distract you. He's even silencing your success, not because it's over, but because He's about to build something bigger. But He needs your undivided attention, because what's coming next will require the strongest version of you. Not the you that needs applause to move, not the you that depends on external motivation, but the you who can stand firm when the stage is empty and the lights are off, because you know who walks beside you in the dark. There's a quote that says, you can't heal in the same environment that broke you. That's why He pulls you out. That's why He isolates you. That's why it feels like you're losing everyone and everything. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being planted. Let me give you a practical example. There's a man who once lost his job unexpectedly. At first, it crushed him. He fell into anxiety, felt like a failure, and questioned his worth. But with no distractions, no safety net, and no one to save him, he discovered his passion. He started a small online business in his apartment. It grew, and today he leads a team and employs dozens of people. That job loss, it wasn't punishment. It was the push he needed to step into purpose. Maybe your loneliness is the same. Maybe your solitude isn't proof you're forgotten, but proof you're being chosen. Because the truth is, God doesn't build warriors on the battlefield. He builds them in the wilderness. And when the time is right, when you've been refined, humbled, and rebuilt from the inside out, He'll bring you back into the world, stronger, wiser, unshakable. So don't rush the process. Don't curse the silence. Lean into it. Because right now, when no one sees it, when no one celebrates it, you are becoming unstoppable. When things start falling apart, the human instinct is to panic. We see doors closing, relationships breaking, finances collapsing, and our first thought is, it's over. But what if the very thing you're calling the end is actually where your true story begins? You see, God never wastes pain. He doesn't let things fall apart to destroy you. He lets them fall apart so you'll finally stop building on foundations that were never meant to last. Loss is not the end of your life. It's the clearing of space, a divine demolition to make room for what's next. Picture this. A woman who's given years to a job, shows up early, stays late, sacrifices everything, only to be laid off without warning. She feels betrayed, uncertain, empty. But that emptiness, it becomes the womb of a new idea. She starts writing again, something she hadn't done since college. That writing becomes a blog. The blog becomes a book, and today she inspires millions around the world. The layoff was not the end. It was the beginning. God often uses disruption as his loudest form of direction. Because if he didn't allow the breakup, the bankruptcy, the setback, you'd stay where it's safe. And what's safe is often too small for the purpose he's placed inside you. So when you find yourself stripped of the things you thought were permanent, don't curse the loss. Ask instead, what is this making space for? Because sometimes the only way for God to get your attention is to remove the thing you've been using to distract yourself from him. Sometimes he must shake everything you've known to remind you that he alone is unshakable. Let me take you deeper. Think about the story of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. To the outside world, Joseph looked like a man who lost everything. But in heaven's perspective, every loss was a redirection. Each time something was taken from him, it was actually taking him closer to the palace. And when the time was right, Joseph didn't just survive, he ruled. That's the kind of God you serve. A God who can turn a prison into a promotion, a betrayal into a blessing, a closed door into the gateway of your greatest breakthrough. But here's what you need to understand. Loss doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like pain. It feels like grief. It feels like silence after the music stops. And in those moments, it's easy to believe the lie. This is it. This is the end of me. But friend, that voice is not your truth. It's your fear. And fear has a voice, but it doesn't have authority unless you give it power. You have to speak louder than that voice. You have to remind yourself, this loss is not my finish line. It's my launching pad. You may be stripped, but you're not empty. You may be broken, but you're not done. You may be down, but you're not out. Because in every great comeback story, there's a moment when the hero loses everything before they rise. That moment is now. And if you can stand in your loss, refuse to bow to discouragement, and trust that God is still working behind the curtain, then what comes next will not just restore what you lost, it will multiply it. So wipe your tears, pick up your faith, and walk into the unknown, not as someone defeated, but as someone finally free to begin again. Because loss is not the end of your story. It's the page God turns to write the next chapter. There will be moments in your life when people start to drift away. Friends you once trusted stop calling. Connections fade. Doors that once swung wide open now slam shut in your face. At first it feels personal. You ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Why is this happening now? And worst of all, am I being abandoned? But what if I told you those exits weren't rejections? They were rearrangements. God doesn't just prune trees. He prunes people, not out of punishment, but out of protection. When he's preparing to pour something significant into your life, he knows exactly who can carry it with you. and who would crack under the pressure. So before the blessing arrives, he clears the path. He removes those who can't walk into your future, so you don't keep dragging your past. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's confusing. But no transformation comes without separation. Look at Abraham. God didn't give him a map. He gave him an instruction. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Not bring them, not check with them. Leave them, because sometimes elevation requires isolation. The next level of your calling isn't crowded. It's quiet. It's focused. It's sacred. And it demands room to grow. Room that your old circle, old habits, old comfort zones just won't allow. Let me give you a real-world example. There was a young man, talented, ambitious, driven. He grew up in a toxic environment where no one believed in dreams. The more he tried to grow, the more he was mocked. So one day he walked away, not out of arrogance, but obedience. He got quiet. He worked in silence. Years later, the same voices that laughed came knocking, this time asking how he did it. God didn't remove them to hurt him. He removed them to make space so the man could grow without being choked by the weeds of doubt. That's what pruning does. It protects the future you don't yet see. You might be in a season right now where friendships are falling off, family is distant, and the relationships you once leaned on feel shaky. It's okay. It's part of the process. Because God doesn't just plant blessings, He prepares the soil. And sometimes the people you love most aren't meant to go where you're going. Their role in your story was real, but it was seasonal, not eternal. Let me be clear. Not everyone around you is equipped to handle your vision. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some will resist it. Others will try to hold you back, not because they're evil, but because your elevation exposes their stagnation. And God sees that. So instead of asking, why are they leaving? Start asking, what is God making space for? You're not being left behind. You're being lifted up. And the silence in your life right now is not loneliness. It's divine realignment. Don't fight to keep what God is removing. Don't water relationships that are no longer growing. Don't apologize for the distance He is creating, because that distance is not emptiness. It's a runway. God is clearing the ground because something is about to take off. You've prayed. You've planned. You've put in the work, but nothing seems to be moving. You're stuck in the waiting room of life, watching other people get called in for their breakthrough, while your name never comes up. And slowly, a dangerous whisper begins to echo in your mind, maybe it's not going to happen for me. Maybe God changed His mind. Maybe I missed my chance. Let me stop you right there. Delay is not denial. God is not ignoring you. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. You're not being rejected. You're being refined. Think about Joseph. He had a dream as a teenager that one day he would rise to greatness. But before the dream came to life, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison, and forgotten. 13 years. 13 years between the dream and the destiny. But not one of those years was wasted. In that prison cell, God was molding Joseph's character so that when the palace doors finally opened, he wouldn't crumble under the weight of power. What looks like a pause in your life may actually be the most productive chapter of your story. Because in delay, God is doing 3 things. 1, He's building strength in the waiting. Muscles don't grow without resistance. Faith doesn't grow without silence. The delay is where God strengthens your patience, your maturity, your character, so the blessing doesn't break you when it comes. Imagine giving a child the keys to a sports car. It's a gift, but without maturity. it becomes a curse. God isn't withholding your blessing. He's upgrading your capacity to handle it. 2, He's aligning the right conditions. Sometimes the delay has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the people, places, and moments He's aligning around you. The person you're meant to marry might not be ready yet. The business you're building might be one connection away from the door opening. The opportunity might be waiting on someone else to move before it reaches you. Delay doesn't mean forgotten. It means alignment is still in progress. San, He's testing your trust. Do you still trust Him? When you can't trace Him, do you still move forward? When every sign says wait, that's the difference between people who give up at the edge of their blessing and those who walk into it with fire. Let me share a real story. There was a woman who spent nearly a decade building her dream business. Year after year, she poured her soul into it, but nothing clicked. Friends told her to quit. Family laughed at her vision. She even doubted herself. But one morning, just like any other, a single unexpected message landed in her inbox. A major investor had found her tiny online shop by accident. And within 6 months, she was running a global brand. 10 years of waiting, 6 months of breakthrough. Delay is not denial. Delay is setup. You've prayed. You've waited. You've been pruned, tested, and refined. But here's the truth many miss. The blessing isn't activated by hope. It's activated by motion. Even the most perfect plan from God won't manifest in your life if you stand still in fear. Because faith isn't just a belief in your heart. It's a step with your feet. And blessings don't chase those who sit still. They meet those who move. God didn't part the Red Sea while the Israelites stayed frozen in fear. It parted as they walked toward it. The miracle was waiting, but it responded to movement. You're waiting on God, but God is waiting on you, waiting for you to say yes before the answer arrives, waiting for you to leave the safe harbor before He shows you the land, waiting for you to act, not because you're ready, but because you trust. Faith without works is dead. James 2:26. You can have the fire, the stirring, the vision, but without movement, it dies in silence. There are books unwritten, businesses unbuilt, dreams buried, not because God didn't bless them, but because someone refused to move. Here's the secret no one tells you. You don't need to feel qualified. You don't need a full map. You just need to take the next faithful step. Because movement creates momentum, and momentum invites the miraculous. Let me show you this truth through one more story. There was a man named Kevin, a truck driver with no business background, no wealthy network, and no confidence in public speaking. But he had a dream, to mentor young men who grew up without fathers like he did. For years, the dream stayed silent. Until one day he decided to start not big but small. One video, one story, one word of encouragement. It had 12 views, but he kept moving. Video after video, day after day. No explosion, no viral moment, just faith plus action. 3 years later, that same man was invited to speak on stages across the country, published his first book, and now runs a mentorship program impacting thousands. Not because he had it all figured out, but because he moved, and God met him in motion. So what about you? You feel the calling. You've been through the fire. You've seen the signs. Now it's your turn to act. Don't wait for certainty, move with conviction. Don't wait for applause, move with alignment. Don't wait for the door to open knock, because the blessing you're praying for is not waiting in the clouds. It's waiting on the other side of your first step. God honors obedience in motion. He meets those who walk toward the storm, not to be defeated by it, but to conquer it. So rise up, Step out and walk like the blessing is already yours. Because maybe, just maybe, it is. So before you go, if this message stirred something inside you, don't just let it fade. Subscribe for more soul-deep truths. Like this video to let us know it spoke to you, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. Because your breakthrough might just be one repeat away. We'll be here every time you hit play.